Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So Shang-Chi continues Phase 4 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where we've already had one feature film, that's Black Widow, and 3 TV shows exclusively for Disney+, which are WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki. And judging from the title alone of this film, you can tell already that it's going to be a very different film than anything we've actually seen so far in the franchise. And I'll be honest, before the film went into production and was released, I'd not even heard of the Shang-Chi character before, and I'll probably speak for a lot of people as well, because I think it comes down to having really followed the particularly popular superheroes, you know, like the likes of Iron Man and Spider-Man and Hulk, Captain America, Thor, etc. But here in this film we have the first Asian-led Marvel film, and it's come at a time when the MCU is evolving more than ever, following the events of Avengers Endgame. So Shang-Chi is set in another Marvel world that explores broad context surrounding the Ten Rings from a millennium ago, and its use to infiltrate and conquer governments and kingdoms throughout history. In the present day, Shang-Chi's father is in possession of them, and it's up to the titular hero to explore and face his own past after being drawn back into it by his own family. So when you think about the context of this film, it definitely makes a statement in many ways, a lot like Black Panther did and how Captain Marvel did, while also expanding the universe even further. I think it comes down to perspective, and a large portion of that stems from the representation of the Asian culture in this film. And I think the ways that a part of the Asian culture was something that was educational for the audience, but at the same time it had elements in it that was exaggerated as well for the superhero genre, and to give us still that same feeling of it being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because when you watch the film, you'll know that there's a lot of context in this film that goes into a lot of detail about the character's past. A large portion of the context of the story really does play a significant part in the direction that the characters are going in the present time. But it was still very crucial to add a lot of context anyway, because you get that in many origin stories, because you learn more about their past, you learn more about the reasons why they become that superhero. And credit does go to the screenwriters for that narrative depth, and it helped us understand the characters in a lot more detail. But the representation of the Asian culture in this film was celebrated, and it was just so highly positive. I mean, when I talk about narrative depth, it's just when you watch the film you find it very emotionally overwhelming, given how many themes that the film touches upon, you know, like murder, grief, family, abandonment, and also revenge as well in many ways. And there's just a roller coaster of emotions that you feel along the way as you follow the character, and you know, you learn more about his past and again context. And the film was directed by a guy called Destin Daniel Cretton, whose filmography so far primarily consists of documentaries and short films, and this was his first mainstream breakthrough. And to be fair, it was a brilliant start for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes next, hopefully with a sequel, fingers crossed. But besides the narrative structure, the production values were absolutely spot on. They were absolutely on point, that really met the themes and really kind of, you know, gave us that sense of excitement as well, and also the representation too, especially as far as the costume design and the sets are concerned. And to be honest, I wouldn't expect anything less anyway from a film that involves kung fu, particularly like the use of colours on the costumes, and aesthetically the sets, like, you know, the temples, really kind of gave us a educational understanding of the culture, while also still giving us a very intriguing aspect of that. I mean, in a way, a bit like Wakanda in Black Panther. I know obviously that's definitely a fictional world, even more so than the one we get in this film, but it kind of introduces a certain world within a certain group that is reflected through the traditions of things, like I said earlier, in the Asian culture, to do with the costumes and the set, really enhanced that, and I think that's why it celebrates it. It didn't feel any different than any other MCU film that we've seen, and it shouldn't feel any different, and that's why it became a success. And another production aspect in this film that I really liked was the action sequences, because we're so used to a lot of CGI in the MCU. You know, you have planes flying around, superheroes leaping everywhere, and, you know, magic being twisted and turned, etc. But I feel the strongest emphasis on the action sequences in this film was the choreography, because of course it being solely relating to kung fu and, you know, all the martial arts movements, it really was more like giving us something truthful to what the style of kung fu and martial arts is like, while at the same time exaggerating it for the purpose of the genre. But yes, the narrative structure, the themes, the representation and the production values all worked and gelled really well together. Now onto the performances. Simu Liu plays Shang-Chi, aka Sean in America, and he already makes history by becoming the first Asian-led superhero. And why I liked Shang-Chi as a superhero was because he challenges a lot of emotional values that not many other superheroes do. I think it's his emotional and moral values that ultimately define who he is as a superhero. Because he grew up as a trained assassin under his father's influence, he seeked a normal life in San Francisco, but he ended up being dragged back into it again following an incident in America, which was a brilliant action sequence, by the way. And I think it's about him challenging his own emotions, really, based on things that have happened in the past, making his own independent choices as to what's right and what's wrong. Does he stay loyal to his family? Does he not? It's those kind of choices that he makes that ultimately, like I say, define who he really is. But Leo's performance in it was really, really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in other installments in the future. Awkwafina as Katie, though, I mean, I think she was just an absolute delight as soon as she appeared on screen until the very last second, because she was the humour, really, the main source of it, who was portrayed like as an American girl, hence why she's called Katie. But interestingly, she's of Asian descent herself. She's whisked into this world alongside Shang-Chi, who is her friend. Even though I'm not necessarily saying that we learn about her family history as well, I think it kind of helps us understand her more as well, in terms of her own transformation and understanding her own heritage too, beyond her parents and beyond when she moved to America. So that aspect of her was really, really crucial, and it plays along with that in a humorous kind of way. But Awkwafina was very, very good in this film, and I think she's an absolutely fantastic talent, so I'm intrigued to see where the character goes next alongside Shang-Chi. Another interesting character was Wenwu, who's Shang-Chi's father, and he was played by Tony Leung. What I found with this particular character was that he's very, very different than any other Marvel Cinematic Universe villain that we've seen so far, because a lot of them, you know, have certain motivations to get what they want, you know, whether it's greed, whether it's jealousy, whether it's anger. In this case, it's a lot more complex. I would probably say he's equally as complex a villain as Loki was. And why I find him fascinating, because his motivations are very, very different, because you really follow his own emotional journey, because we start to understand how he's feeling. And again, as I mentioned earlier about choices, with this particular character, it's almost like, does he do something right for the world and therefore wrong for him, or does he do something right for him and wrong for the world? And that's pretty much the entire point of that character, and that's why he's so complex. It's about emotional, you know, choosing and challenging your own morals as an individual, and that's why I found him such a very, very intriguing villain. And also Michelle Yeoh appears as Ying Nan, who served as Shang-Chi's mentor in the film. Of course, she's best known for having appeared in the James Bond film Tomorrow Never Dies, but also in the Academy Award-winning martial arts film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. She helps him explore his own family history while also helping him fulfill his own destiny. And I'm sure I've said this in a lot of Marvel related videos that I've done in recent months, but there's always a Hollywood A-lister who serves in that mentor role. Yeoh appears as that role to Shang-Chi. And another interesting appearance I thought was Benedict Wong as Wong, who of course we know in Doctor Strange and Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, because Wong and Doctor Strange for that matter have similar powers to Shang-Chi because of mystic arts and the use of magic, etc. I think there will be a time in the future where we will see a bit of a collaboration between Doctor Strange and Shang-Chi. So overall, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was absolutely fantastic. It was thoroughly entertaining from start to finish. I don't think it necessarily meant to directly become a homage to classic kung fu films, but people may perceive it that way because of the representations of the culture. I can't praise it enough for the representations, and to be honest, going into the film I wasn't really sure what to expect. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily surprised by the film overall, but I knew because they were releasing it that it was going to be a crucial piece of the puzzle for the future of the MCU, but also to potentially fill a few gaps in regards to the whole entire plot of the MCU that we've had so far. So yes, the narrative structure, despite the slightly questionable pacing towards the end, and the production values, were absolutely brilliant, and I thought it was just a wonderful addition to the MCU. It really, really was. What did you think of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings? Will we get a sequel? Were you a bit disappointed by the film? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you did go on to enjoy this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and have a notification bell tick so you're notified when I upload a new video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, everybody.